forward to this. Rightio, we're away. Good evening, everyone, and thanks for joining us this evening. I'm Chris, VK3QB, as I'm sure you all know, and this is the monthly Zoom session where we interview someone of interest who can share some good stories with us and maybe some inspiration and experience to help us all get a little bit better with our Morse code. Quick bit of housekeeping. We'll just go through the interview with Bernd and then we'll take questions. For those of you that aren't aware, the website has changed. It's now masteringmorse.com, and that's where all of the interviews have been recorded for this year, and a bunch of other hints and tips for those of you who might be having a few questions you'd like answered. So feel free to go and have a look at that website. It's terrific to have Bernd join us this evening. Thanks very much for joining us, Bernd. I might just chuck it across to you to give a quick introduction. How did you find out? How did you get involved in amateur radio, and where did it all begin?
Yeah, thank you, Chris, and hi everybody. And it's good to see so many CW enthusiasts in the year 2026. It's really, well, for me, it's the superior mode, and obviously it's the same for you. It's been part of my amateur radio life since I started. Well, I started, I got my license in 1978, back in West Germany then, at the age of 16, and I migrated to Australia in 97. So the best part of my amateur life, I've been living here in God's own country. I actually got involved, a couple of years probably before I got my license then, with amateur radio itself. I had to wait until I was 16 for legal reasons then in the old country. And I started to learn Morse code, got attracted, I think it was an ad in the newspaper by a local club at that time. Just remember in those days there was quite a bit of activity on CB radio, and there were many people moving from CB into amateur radio. The situation then in Germany, as it was, or West Germany as it was almost everywhere, was that you had to pass your tests and do a CW exam to get on shortwave. We only had basically two types of licenses, one UHF, one HF plus UHF. So, well, VHF. I was eager to get my shortwave license then, and I started to learn Morse code at a fairly young age, which made it a lot easier. I acknowledge that. It's like learning a language at the age of 13 versus 50. There's a bit of a difference there. So I got my ticket in at the age of 16 then, and I went straight into Morse code, basically. I probably took a couple of months until I got my first radio, set up station at home, and well, from then onwards, it was 99.9% over there CW. There was no training, no warming up time for me in those days. I had to turn on the transceiver, get the tubes warmed up, and get on air. It was, I remember it was pretty exciting then.
What did you? What method did you learn to use the code back then, and what speed was your entry level speed?
Well, in terms of transmitting, I learned squeeze paddles, and but the license exam, we still had to do it with a straight key. And well, basically receiving, it was someone who did his training in the military then. And well, it was his method, you know, I mean, letter by letter, and it was not from A to Z. It followed a certain sequence from one dot, or I don't know how you do it, but there is a better way to do it. And writing it all down. What I remember is we started actually with relatively fast individual characters and longer breaks, which made it a bit easier then. And yeah, entry level was 60 letters, which is, what's that, 12 words per minute for us. And yeah, I passed in the first go and got my ticket and went on air. The good thing, just to add on that, was it was mandatory for males in those days to do military service after school, after high school, and I joined the radio section there. So I had my advantage of I knew Morse code while everybody around me had to learn it in the military. And so that was pretty easy for me.
Terrific, terrific. And did you do much on-air CW for the military?
Well, for the military, it was only on the receiving end. I mean, in those days, I was in charge for listening to the top level Russian net or Soviet from Moscow into East Germany, and it was all coded. So what we were doing, we were just writing down at high speed letters and numbers in groups of 5, and someone else looked into that. Yeah.
Oh, great, great. That's a nice segue into our Cold War badge.
Yeah.
Morse with purpose. No, that's great. And where did you go from there, Bernd?
Well, from day one, well, month 2, I should say, I got into CW and and I was on every day and was excited, and my speed improved, and we were basically getting together on air on 4080. I was a lot on 40 and 80. Youngsters at that time, there were quite a few of them around, and basically we pumped ourselves up with the speed. So there is different speed levels and clubs, very high speed club, very high speed club. I made it to both. Then there's the super high speed, extra high speed. There were others who went into that. So I was very much focusing on CW as in chatting, in rag chewing. And it was sometimes it was a bit chaotic, not the standard QSOs. It was several people on one frequency, and they just threw in as we talk now, maybe without call sign. Well, we legally used the call sign.
Yeah.
It was a given. It was really very dynamic. And then I moved into, well, after the first year, I moved into DXer. I found I had a wire antenna, and I found that I can tune it to 10, 15, and 20. And it was at high sunspots, and I worked a bit of DX, spent some time there. And at the same time, I really got into contesting. And I was a bit lucky because in those days, there was a group of, elderly people. You would call them old farts these days. I'm one of them now. And they have been doing it for ages, and they welcomed me as a young fellow, and so that's where I got into that trade, and I got hooked, I must say. So from then onwards, it was for me CW and contesting in that combination.
What advice would you give to newcomers to help overcome the initial nerves and anxiety that seem to accompany getting on air for the first time?
Well, I mean, there's no way to get rid of it. I mean, I think everybody's nervous in the beginning before the first QSO or even the first 10 or 100 QSOs. But I think the best thing to do is kick your bum a bit and turn on the transceiver. Listen, find someone CQing at the speed you're comfortable with, and then reply to the CQ with your call sign. And you see, I mean, when I started with CW, I did write down everything, my first QSOs, but over time, and that was in my case relatively quickly because of my age, I started to drop it, and it all went on in my mind. So it became that CW is in fact a second language, So yeah.
Okay, great, great. And then you've come to Australia, you've set up a station here. I see that now, I gather you're running a remote station. How has your station developed over the years, and how has CW changed over the years?
Well, I mean, talking about my station, I got a station now here in Australia, but it's apart from the fact when I started in the old country, I had a station at home which was very basic, a TSA 20 Kenwood, and the it was a W3DZZ wire antenna with traps for 80 and 40 at that time, and that was it. That was my station. Then I moved out of the house, and since then until say 2018, I didn't have my own station. I I went to visit people. I went to clubs. I went to participated in contests. I went to other countries for contests. Visited people there. So it's a bit like I'm back to the basics. Finally, it was hard yakka for me to get to this point, my own station. And now I have it, and I'm very happy with it. It's quite decent with quite a number of antennas on different bands, mono banders, and decent setup, all Elecraft K3 for me. In terms of how CW has changed, it has, in fact. I mean, rack tuning maybe not so much, because the time when I started, there were already the electronic keys around, and it has changed in a way. When I think back, former Soviet Union or former Eastern countries, the signals have changed, definitely. I mean, there were lots of homemade rigs over there, and the sound CW was sometimes a bit rougher, but the way it was, I mean, it's I can say in contesting it has changed big time because of logging and automation and the use of keyboards, and even for some people the use of decoding software. So that has had an impact big time on CW. But in general, it's Dida is still A, Dada did it is still Z. So that's still the same.
Yeah,
But also what I have to say, what I've noticed is certainly, like everybody, I would say here, a decline, first of all, in the number of licenses or hams around the world. But on the contesting side, there's, particularly in Europe, there's kind of a bunch of younger people joining who are very skillful, and some Americans too, very skillful with CW. But some of them are basically sitting and using the machine, the computer, and not all of them do or can even basically use a pedal and do a recture QSO. So
yeah.
it's a
Yeah,
bit,
that's something I've seen a lot of change in recent years. There's a lot more people who are doing the head copy, which is great.
yeah,
But a lot of function key use for contesting
yeah,
and DXing. And certainly, when you look at the contesters these days and the sort of rates they're getting, I don't know that you could sustain that if you didn't have computer logging and function keys.
yeah. No, and the mental capacity. I mean, with two radios at one time and switching mentally between the two, and I mean, that's now possible from a software and hardware point of view. And some people have taken it on and they're mastering it. And that's really, I mean, if you look at, and this again, if the number of QSOs, for example, that people do in a 24 or 48-hour period has dramatically increased at the single op level.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it used to be that a fantastic run rate was 160, 180 QSOs an hour. What are the
Yeah.
top operators doing these days?
Oh, well, they're doing well over 400.
Oh,
500, but you can't do it with one radio on CW. It's
yeah,
impossible. I mean, so they do it with this sequenced switching between one and the radio one and radio two, and it's got to be. But you see, the extra challenge that we have in this part of the world is signal levels.
yeah. Yeah,
And
yeah, I know. Since I moved and had to downgrade from a four-element beam to a vertical and a dipole, half the challenge is being heard. And of course, quite often there's, understandably, I suppose, a reluctance for DX to spin their antennas our direction,
yeah,
simply because there's not enough of us to give them the numbers.
yeah, there is. I mean, we're talking about CW, a little bit about contesting and all that. And for me, one of the messages I would like to get across is for those who haven't tried it, participating in a contest, just give it a go. And pick a small, a slowish contest and go on. And you'd be surprised if it's an international contest, how much we are in demand. I mean, I have the direct comparison from my old life in Delta Lima. And when you got on air as a DL, then, well, yeah, you could raise a bit of a pilot, but here it's different. I mean, particularly when there's openings into Europe or into the United States, and we are relatively loud over there or readable, and they turn, as you say, their antennas for these couple of hours into our direction. Yeah, they're having fun working us, and they're really chasing us with
Yeah, yeah,
ZL
yeah.
and VK at the same
That's it.
time.
That's it. Yeah, well, it's another multiplier.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what it
Yeah.
is.
But look, your point is well made. If you're not into contesting, to consider giving it a go. I know there's a bunch of us who this time 2 or 3 years ago would not have considered the CW tests that CW Ops run. Now
Mm,
that's, I think, 4 1-hour contests each
mm.
week, 2,300 local time on a Wednesday, and then 3 sessions on the Thursday. And being 1 hour, it doesn't take a lot out of your day, but you get exposed to that fast Morse code, and it really helps you build your skills.
Yes, definitely. I mean, one thing that you learn the quickest is to understand and read your own call sign. So, so don't get scared off by some people who really are ramping up their speed. You at one stage you will be able to hear that they're getting back to you, and this is
Yeah,
only
yeah,
about an exchange.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
about
yeah.
the cocktail, like the cocktail party phenomenon.
That's it.
When you hear your name, yeah, oh, that's me.
That's it. That's it. And then, you know, something I had never known, but now I can copy cut numbers.
Yeah, yeah,
Another very foreign concept that would throw me
yeah,
out. But
yeah.
when these guys get going, it makes all the difference.
It does, and also if you're starting, I mean, I remember when I started, and yes, there were some people out there who were too fast, and would have been too fast for me to. So I have a proper longer QSO with them, but it was all about the exchange, and at that stage, I really didn't bother too much to copy the exchange correctly.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
was about making the contact, and maybe it was a new country for me or something like that.
yeah,
So it
yeah.
was in my log,
Yeah,
and that
yeah, yeah.
was
Look, I
was
know
it.
sometimes I'm not quite certain of the call sign, but I've gotten quite good at copying numbers.
Mm,
And I'll copy the number exchange, and it's the member number. So I know who that
okay,
is. So it confirms the call sign for me.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, and I should. I mean, getting back to the question how CW has changed. I mean, a big change is the RBN, the reverse beacon network, where basically computers decode and listen to the whole spectrum on the bands, and they decode the call signs of people, and they kind of present it on your computer who is where. And so you basically, and that's the easiest thing, you just click there. Whether it's fun for some people, it's not fun to do that, but it's made easy. The only thing which again is what's important, if you do that, be careful and do a double check whether that spotted call sign is actually the real call sign of that station that's on that frequency, or whether also computers can make errors.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Good, good. And now, something that's fascinating to me, your journey to WRTC. When did that all begin?
That began actually back in the old country in West Germany. First of all, for those who are not familiar with WRTC, and well, I'll just give you a quick explanation of what it is. It's WRTC, World Radio Team Championship. It's basically the Olympics in our hobby for those who are into contesting. And it happens now every 4 years in a different country. It all started actually in the year 1990 in Seattle, and it was a predecessor of WRTC then. It was called the Goodwill Games as part of a bigger event that also included lots of sporting events, but also amateur radio. And it was the first time then when there were, in those days, teams from the former Soviet Union, from China, from countries that were restricted with their travels in those days, were invited to join. But the first formal WRTC, which is based on qualification rules, where the whole world is basically divided into different zones, and each zone represents a team of 2 operators at that event. So basically the aim is for organizers, first of all, to provide a space that is equal as possible for everybody in terms of station location, equipment, antennas, power, so that in theory the only difference would be the skills that they have. So providing equal ground for competition, and then just let yourself come in, and the best should win. As we know, there's lots of things that can happen still. But yeah, 96 was my first participation, and it was in San Francisco in those days. The rules were not as strict as they are now, and this leveling ground was nowhere near where it is today. So that was very exciting, and I mean, for me, always, whether it was then or now, the most recent one was in the UK just this year, where I represented the South Pacific, basically, with a mate of mine from Zulu Lima, ZL3CW, Jackie, and myself. We went there as Team Oceania too. So basically, this was my 7th WRTC. They all have changed. And for me, since the beginning, it's primarily a social event, because you happen to meet people who you normally only meet for 59930 or something like that. And now you can put a face to that. And believe it or not, even only with that brief exchange or many exchanges over the year, there is a kind of a bonding happening over the years with people. When you see them again, and others, you all of a sudden know the face. And for me, the interesting thing, and I don't know if that's too boring for you, but I'm a visual person. So when I do a contest and I work someone and I have met him, well, the face pops up. So it happens one after another. Yeah. So that basically, these first WRTCs, they kind of, they got me going, and they got me interested, and I was trying to participate. It took me a while. When I moved to Australia in 97, 30 years ago, there was no ground to really qualify. So I
because you have to pre-qualify by getting certain other contests at a place or a certain score, don't you?
Yeah, basically you're measured and compared with your peers in your region, and there's a certain amount, a certain type of contest, shortwave contests. They're all CW and SSB, which a pool where you can pick from, and a minimum number where you have to participate in order to achieve your points. And you're measured, your final score is measured against all other participants in your class, in your area, and then you get whatever 1,000 points max. If you topping the list, you get the full 1,000 points. If you're below that, you get a percentage off, depending on how much different your score was to the winner in that category. So that's that. The other way to get in is as a referee, because there's 50, 60 teams from around the world. This time it was only 50, and each team of 2 has a referee sitting behind them and just watching and seeing whether they're doing the right thing. So as a referee, I applied, and that was my second time in the WRTC. First time from Australia. I got accepted as a referee in 2000 to come to Slovenia. The then Australian team was actually John VK2IA, then VK2IA and VK2XY. So Australia was representing, New Zealand wasn't at that time, and I don't know what the criteria were, but these days it's clearly South Pacific or even the whole of the Pacific, and we have to compete against Hawaii.
Yeah, right. And then, so you go over there, all this great socializing, which I can imagine would have been fantastic to meet and greet so many people. As you say, you've just exchanged the 59930 or whatever it may be. And then you sit down in front of this station, and presumably you and Jackie had a bit of a game plan. Walk us through how that worked.
Yeah, basically, I mean, the tricky bit for us living in this part of the world is really to know about propagation in the other part of the world. And Jackie is ex-French, F2CW, and myself, we kind of have this still a bit of memory about what it was like. But still in Europe, that was in the UK. It's different. Propagation is different to Germany or France. Same as here between ZL and VK4 or VK6. So there's huge differences. So we had to we went through old logs of other people. We talked about strategy, what band openings, and looked at where to be, at what time it was. By the way, these days it's a multi-2 contest. So there's 2 stations, 2 operators, 24 hours, and we're constantly on air, calling secure or running or searching multipliers. So basically, there's got to be strategy behind it. Ours was not the best, but and I also, I mean, because of my family connections still into Europe and to Delta Lima, I grew up near Luxembourg, so I went there twice to Luxembourg, Lima Express 7, India, maybe called it, might be familiar to the one or the other, and participated there in the IARU contest, which is the WRTC contest that's just overlaid over IARU in July. So there was a bit of practice for me. And of course, I shouldn't give you the wrong impression. We did not just go there for socializing. It was also, of course, for the contest. But
Now 24 hours. That's a hard slog. How did you manage to get through?
Well, it was okay. I mean, I'd say compared to here, it's more difficult here because the 24-hour contests in Europe, they start from around midday plus minus until midday the next day. So you basically, it's a late morning start, midday start. While here, the 24-hour contests, they start late evening or in the evening, ZL 8 o'clock, and here 10, 11 o'clock local time, PM. And so that makes it a long day if you can't have a nap. So, but it was okay. I mean, the 48-hour contests, like the big ones, CQ Worldwide, they're trickier. And it's certainly, I can feel the pinch of age. It's easier. It's not easy, but it's more manageable when you're younger.
Of course.
To get through.
Most things are easier when you're younger.
Yeah. Of course, yeah.
Yeah. I know on our recent trip to Lord Howe Island, admittedly conditions were appalling this year, but normally a 6 or 8 hour run, absolutely fine. No troubles at all. But to think of sitting behind the radio for 24 hours without a break. Do you take obviously you take
Yeah.
nature breaks and a
Yes,
meal
yes.
break and that sort of stuff. Any sort of 20-minute quick naps, anything like that?
No, no, well, not 24 hours. No,
No.
that's too short. But I mean, 48 hours is either 1.5 or 3 hour naps for me. And also, I think, I mean, I'm getting to a point now where I start enjoying multi-operator contests, multi-single or multi-two contests, because as a team, it's not only about the camaraderie that kind of you can indulge in while you're there, of course,
Yeah.
radio, but it's also, I mean, the breaks. And if you say many more operators in the team than what's required and who's some are resting, then yeah, the others have just social fun
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
barbecues and all that. So it's
Yeah.
part of
Yeah. Yeah.
that's becoming more important for me these
Yeah, I
days.
guess it's a lot like our D expeditions in that regard, where you're on air, but there might be someone sitting beside you having a glass of red or a cup of coffee.
Yeah,
And when it eases off, you have a little bit of a chat and someone else comes and takes over.
yeah.
So what did you have? What, two radios in the same, were you in a tent or where were you set up?
Yes, yes, we were all in a tent, same tents. They were all set up prior to our arrival, and they were a minimum of 500 meters apart. They were at the end of the day, they were in clusters on some big walls. You need to find flat terrain land and talk and find owners who let you set up all that. So there were a few clusters, and the clusters themselves were, I don't know, 20, 30 Ks away, but pretty much in one radius of 50
Yeah,
Ks.
anyways. I wouldn't
So,
want to be 500K away from 500 meters away from someone running a
uh,
kilowatt pointing their beam at me.
no, no, no. I mean, over there, it's
Mm.
100 watts. That's the
Ah,
power limit.
right. Good. Good.
But you still could tell who was closer. But you did not know because we all had random call signs with special prefixes. In England this time it was Mike Bravo, the prefix, which was never used. Short call towers was Mike Bravo to uniform, and this was basically the call tower was drawn. Was it the night before or the morning? No, the night before, but and put in an envelope, and it was opened 15 minutes before the contest started, and people could only knew the call by then, and they were not identifiable in the first minutes by others. Yeah, but
Yep. Right. And what sort of antennas did you have?
we had tri-banders all at the same height, same type, and dipoles for 40 and 80. So
Right.
IRU and some other contests like what is it, IOTA, they're pretty much Europe focused.
Yeah.
So I mean, sitting there is great fun. Being at this end is also fun, but you see by the type of QSOs who you're talking to, it's two hemispheres basically competing in parallel.
Yeah. 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 And how did you and Jackie work it when you were sitting alongside one another around things like band selection?
Well, I mean, we basically we saw because we were using software. We used N1MM logging software. We saw where the other one was and could. It was virtually a multi-two setup, and also we talked to each other. I mean, not often, but important stuff. We talked or moving people from one band to another and all that. So we did talk. We sat next to each other. Yes, and
Yeah. 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 And
we've done. Yeah.
what sort of
So
radios were you using?
Elecraft K3s.
Oh,
So and I think they were used more than 10 years ago, the first time, because that's when they came out, in the beginning of 2012 or whenever they were released. And there were still a few people using Elecraft, and K4s were a few. I think Elecraft was the company that was represented most with most radios at
yeah.
that event.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Now, highlights. The highlights from the event.
Highlights. Well, basically, first of all, touching base, meeting people in person who I haven't seen for ages. While seeing the organizers really doing a fabulous job. That's always a highlight. It's just the time pre and a little bit after when you kind of get together. The actual contest, of course, that was a highlight in itself. That was the reason to be there. But it was exhausting, and we felt a bit deflated at the end because we ended up pretty close to the bottom, I must say. But hey, that's life, and we enjoyed it.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, look, it sounds like you had a great time and certainly a great experience.
Yes.
In wrapping things up this evening, what advice would you give to newcomers around? I know we spoke about this earlier, but getting a toe in the water with contesting, and I guess coupled in with that, adding to your earlier comments on building on-air experience.
Yeah, I mean, well, contesting, first of all, it's not everybody's favor. So I'd say follow wherever your heart is, but give it a go. Contest. Can be a casual thing, and just tap into it. Look at there's a few, even WIA or RASA, they publish contest calendars, and they're available everywhere on the internet. Just find out when there's one. Look at the rules. Who can talk to each other? Sometimes it's an intercontinent. It's a contest where you may not be allowed to participate. An example for me in the old days was, as a Delta Lima, I was not allowed to participate in the Commonwealth contest, for example, because we were not a Commonwealth country. So basically tap into it. In terms of I just give you that slight tap on the back of your head, or just switch on the radio and focus on that. Do that rather than kind of trying to improve and perfectionize your CW offline. It comes with being on air, and everybody makes mistakes, and I'm talking about myself. I had to say, please QRS. I mean, normally the other end should recognize that you may not be the fastest. Or again, question mark, or something I did not understand. Yeah, and then they repeat it again. So there is, and these things still happen. I mean, even copying call signs. Yes, one call sign. Who was that? So we're still humans, and acknowledge that you're human, that goes into some new stuff, and may make the one or the other mistake, but that really adds on to your learning experience. That's how I see it. CW is a great mode, the superior mode, as I said earlier. It's like a language. It's international. And I'm
It
glad to
just
see so
seems
many people.
it's a wonderful way to bond with people. I find that, once you've had 4 or 5 QSOs with the same person, you've almost struck up a special kind of camaraderie, haven't you?
Yes, of course. You do that. What makes it a bit trickier these days, and you getting back to your original question about how CW has changed. Of course, there were more distinct handwritings around, say, a few decades ago, where people were using a straight key, or they were using a bug or something. So you could kind of recognize people. But hey, I mean, even now, just get on the air and try to find maybe like-minded people, day of the week, same time, same frequency, and catch up there.
Yeah.
I know it's easier in Europe because there's lots and lots more people within reach on 40 and 80, even during daytime on 40. But it's possible here.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Look, that's terrific. Thanks very much, Ben. Certainly, I've picked up a few hints and tips, and we've got the CW Ops Open in about 2.5, 3 weeks, I think, on the 5th or 6th of September. Um, so I'll be having a go in that one. Are there any other
Right.
contests on the immediate horizon that you're aware of?
Well, for me, the big ones actually, and the interesting ones from the Oceania point of view, is the time starts in October. It's basically Oceania, the Oceania DX contest on the second weekend, where we are the multipliers for everybody else outside of Oceania. And there is definitely an interest from the outside world to contact us. And then the big ones after that CW contest. Well, SSB, the biggest is in end of October last weekend, CQ Worldwide.
Yep.
And CQ Worldwide, CWN last weekend, end of November, which is the mother of all contests for me. But yeah,
Yeah.
they might be a bit big to participate as a beginner, but to pick the one or the other interesting country, that's the way maybe for you to as an entry point.
Yeah, yeah. And you don't have to go the full 24 hours.
No,
I
no,
mean,
not at
half an
all.
hour here, an hour
Yeah,
there, just to
yeah,
get that exposure,
yeah,
and start, small steps to
yeah.
get familiar with contest exchanges, the
Mm,
speeds that people go at, that sort of stuff. So I
yeah,
think that's
yeah,
generally speaking good advice.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Terrific. All right. Well, look, thanks very much. And look, congratulations as well. I think just getting to WRTC is a significant achievement in itself.
Yeah,
So,
thank you.
really well done on that front. And as you say, I think just getting there and completing it in and of itself is a fantastic accomplishment. Um, I might throw it open and
Thank you.
see if anyone's got any questions. Bernd, I'll just open up the screen here. And does anyone have any questions at all? Raise your hand. Go ahead, Peter.
Thanks, thanks very much. This has been absolutely fascinating to me, who's not familiar with this sort of stuff at all. I've got a couple of questions about your experience in Europe that you were just describing. One, I'd be interested to know at what speed in a contest like that you would typically be calling CQ, and I'd also be interested to know what sort of basic strategy you had at the start about what bands and which way you were going to point, if you can remember anything about that general shape of that strategy that you were using.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. Well, your first question is relatively easy. The speed you call secure is the speed you're comfortable with. I mean, that's and in my case, it's certainly it well, not certainly, but it increased also by means of using computers and memories and all that, and the way the whole contesting became faster. But yeah, whatever you feel like, whether it's 15, 20, one thing to keep in mind really is when you're a bit slower, or when you don't want to mess with the big boys in town, the big signals on the band from the US or Europe or whatever. So stay a bit away from where their frequencies, from the lower end of the band,
I
and
was
focus
actually
a bit
interested
on
to know what speed you were calling at in that contest.
it. Now in you mean in the recent one or
Yeah,
before?
yeah. What
Oh, the
speed were
recent
you
one.
calling at?
Oh,
Yeah.
well, I 32 words per minute, 35. That's,
Yep.
but it really depends on the band as well. It's I mean, I wouldn't do it on 160 or 80. Yeah, but that's it. I'd say or 30 sometimes. Or it depends really. I mean, it's 28, 25. Yeah. But the main speed, usually start around 30, 32. And the second question was how to pick the band or where to start. It's yeah, basically the highest band that's open, where there's lots of QSOs, potential QSOs. So we started there, on 20 and 15 because there was the rest of Europe was open and we could make QSOs and new multipliers.
Yeah, I know for us here in VK3, certainly the southern part, as you know, Peter, we've got the benefit of the RASA RBN, and that's a great resource to go to just to see what's going on the bands, what's the highest band that's open. So that's a good point that Bernd makes. Highest band that's open and work down from there.
Yeah, and it's also depends on the contest. I mean, if say multipliers are countries and zones, as in CQ Worldwide, I tend to be there where multipliers are, or Europe. When Europe's open, that's many multipliers. So I just follow that. Plus, I don't want to miss the Caribbean multipliers or South American that have a shorter opening. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. So, being an active contester, you're also learning a lot about propagation, aren't you?
That's the other fascinating thing, really, that happens when you sit there for 24 hours or even 48 or parts of that, and you see how it changes. You see how it changes, and then you learn about it, but you also enjoy it. I enjoy it. I enjoy when 40 meters into Europe before their sunset, you clearly see the peak.
Yeah.
You see it on 15 even. You see two peaks just after their sunrise, and then a bit later, a few hours later. I mean, it's fascinating. I find it not only from an operational point of view, but also propagation.
Yeah, good. Thanks, Bernd.
Right.
Peter's dropped off, I think. Does anyone else have any questions?
Yeah, it's Alan here. I've got a comment for Bernd.
Go ahead, Alan.
Yeah, I had good time in the contest here, but my feedback is that the competition stations, the MBs were very weak on the East Coast. So I only actually worked 3 or 4 and spent they weren't comparable at all to the usual European kilowatt stations. Back to you, Bernd.
Yeah, no, that's right, Alan. And it was the other way around as well. I mean, for example, we worked 2 VKs, on 2 bands, I should say, 2 VK multipliers. VK was 2015 and ZL was 4020. So, and they were all relatively weak. I mean, one of the facts for that was, we only were running 100 watts, and I don't know where people were pointing their antennas, possibly not towards VK or ZL at that time, because it was a multiplier and not kind of a source for many QSOs. So mainly, you see, the main antenna direction from the UK there were 2 directions. One was east into Europe, the other one was northwest into the North America. And that's unfortunately fact and the reality for us down here. They all beam, most of the time they beam in different directions. And the other thing is that this contest particularly, it's our midwinter contest, same as the IOTA. Somehow we can make the QSOs here, but there's not much overlap. You see, there's maybe a couple or 3, 4, 5 VKs and 3 ZLs showing up in logs there. And the bulk of the stations is from elsewhere. While here, we got the multipliers from Europe, the big ones. And the bulk is maybe US, maybe Japan, maybe, some in the meantime, BY and YB. So, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, good. Any other questions from anyone?
I was just going to say, is Europe Europe always seems to have taken to CW more than Oceania. Is that a true thing to say or a fair thing to say?
Well, CW is very strong in Europe, particularly in the former Eastern countries. I mean, including Russia and all other countries. It has always been and still is the strongest mode. I don't know why. It might have to do with language, but it's also, I don't know, and there's great CW operators in that part of the world. Fantastic people there. And in VK, yes, it's the other way around. It's there might be, I can't remember the figures, but I should know actually, the log entries, CQ Worldwide, which is the biggest contest in the year, international contest, SSB versus CW. It's, well, multiple of the CW entries are SSB entries from VK and ZL. I mean, ZL is a bit more consistent, but in Australia, there's much more emphasis on sideband. And we're in high demand in these contests on CW. I can tell you, it's amazing. And sorry to say, I'm getting excited now, because you see CQ Worldwide, CW, the first opening into the US on 10 or 15 hour mornings. They're going mad. They're going mad because, yeah, we are the first ones. We're the multipliers. We won't last long in terms of propagation. And it's a bit like, what DXer are we? Are we North Korea or something like that? So it's that kind of feeling on CW. SSB, if you're loud, there's a bit more the thing when you got a loud signal, they call you. And bottom line is, yeah, there's a general interest in working VK and ZL from the other end of the world.
Yeah.
There is.
Yep. Yep. Great. Any other questions before we tie the ribbons? No. All righty. Well, look, thanks very much, Bernd. I've found it incredibly interesting, as I'm sure everyone else has, and really appreciate you spending some time with us this evening to talk about your background in Morse code and WRTC more specifically. I'm sure we've all got a lot out of it. And as you've said, even if contesting isn't your thing, try dipping your toe in the water. It never used to be my thing, but I started the CWTs and it's growing on me big time, big time. And the other big thing is skills have improved. The ability to pull call signs out under difficult conditions or under a very, very fast CW. So it's a great way to build your skills as well. I saw your hand go up, Stan.
Yeah, I've got one question for Bernd. It's incredibly interesting what you've been telling us. Thank you so much. What would be the ratio of your operating between a keyboard and a key? Over here I am.
Well, thanks, Dan. Well, in general, I use logging software and I use the keyboard as much as I can. But I also need a key sitting besides me, a paddle, because in case if, say, I'm too slow or it makes click with a call sign in the last minute or last second, I go on the paddle. So that's in contests. But if I do chats, normal QSOs, it's no keyboard.
Oh, right.
I only use paddle.
Oh, thank you.
No worries.
Yep, yep. And we're seeing, I think, more and more of that in contesting and de-expeditions as well. And I think there's that combination of using a paddle and the keyboard. All right. Well, once again, thanks very much for joining us, Bernd. It's been fantastic. I've got a lot out of it, and you've certainly motivated me to have a bit more of a serious go in the next contest that comes along. Use this opportunity to remind people that we've got a randomgram coming up. I think it's this Sunday, isn't it, Stan?
Yes, starts, well, for us anyway, it's 10 a.m. local, but that's 2200 Saturday UTC.
Yep. and we have a VK or a VKZL Oceania focus time from, I think it's 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. our time, Eastern Standard, on Sunday.
That's right.
That's right. So great opportunity to build your skills, copying those, what Bernd would have done a lot of many years ago, copying 5-letter groups. And of course, the Morse with Purpose program that kicked off, I guess, 2 or 3 weeks ago now. There's already some people earning a few badges in that program. If you haven't heard of it before, head over to masteringmorse.com, type in MWP, and you'll get the link to the group's IO page, where you'll find all of the rules and all of the information. So on that note, we're coming in nicely on time. It's just before the end of the hour. So thanks, everyone. Look forward to hearing you all on air and maybe exchanging numbers in contests before too long.
Yeah.
Thanks again, Bernd. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Thanks to everybody for your patience and for listening to me. And thank you, Chris. And you're doing an awesome job with your CW Academy and getting people into CW, which is a dying art. Let's face it. It's an art, but well, yeah, there's not enough people in it anymore. And I'm looking forward to seeing you on the bands. Unfortunately, well, my remote is not working at the moment, but I'm trying to get a bit more also into the rec tuning, back into rec tuning. I love that too.
Great.
So thanks again for everybody for listening.
Great. Thanks very much, Bernd. Thanks, everyone. And we'll see you around the bands, otherwise next month. And for those who might be interested, next month we're going to talk about the recent Lord Howe Island DXpedition, VL2 Juliet, VL2 Lima, I should say. And I think a little bit of a highlight, Kevin, VK3KEV, and Peter, VK3WOW, will give us what it was like to be on their side of the pile-up, given it was one of the first DXpeditions they were chasing. And they worked us on every band. So I think it'll be really interesting to get their perspective, as well as hearing from myself and a couple of the other guys what it was like on Lord Howe Island, when is it, a couple of months ago now. So thanks, everyone, and hopefully we'll see you next month.
Well,
see you.
Bye.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bernd.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.